everybody. Welcome to the Awakener podcast. It's the Awakener. I have the Insider with me. How are you doing, Insider?
I'm doing great, Awakener. Thanks for having me.
We got another great show for everybody today, so we're going to get right to it, okay? So the first thing you need to do before you start listening to the show is go to theawakener.ca. Theawakener.ca is your best resource to figure out what exactly is going on. Don't you feel like you're being gamed? Don't you feel like you're being lied to by like everybody? The reason you're being lied to is because you can't be told about what is actually happening. The Western world is under perilous threat of extinction from a communist conspiracy that has enabled Iran and North Korea to get advanced EMP weapons, miniaturized satellite EMP weapons. The events that are unfolding today are not being told to the general public because people are going to freak out, and it's not good to know about this. The reason I tell you about it is because I was onto this live from a long, long time ago. So I've been detailing this for the past 8 years, I believe, on this podcast while the audience has slowly grown. I got really, really popular before, basically when this special somebody was considered real on the internet. And then it kind of, when people assumed that it wasn't real, it kind of died off. And I think it might come full circle. So to explain it one more time, you do not live in a perfect utopia. The world is not a perfect place. Humans are not perfect. And there will be no peace on this world. So two polar opposites industrial complexes are at war with each other. The U.S. industrial complex that everyone can recognize, which is completely embedded by the communists, and obviously the communist conspiracy. So don't kid yourself that Russia, China, Iran, North Korea, Lebanon, Libya, they all have a secret covert agenda as well. And the whole truth is going to come out. It's only a matter of time. We got a bunch of stuff to talk about. So first thing we're going to talk about is obviously the news, okay? So I want to focus on the Joe Rogan podcast with Trump. My thoughts, once again, like I said, 99.9% of it is completely elevator noise. Elevator noise is considered just the daily occurrences, daily events, and none of it is meaningless. I literally turned it on and I went every 2 minutes and started listening to things. 99.9% of it is useless information. Okay, the events that are unfolding today have to unfold because our enemies are on the verge of destroying and collapsing the Western world. That is, they were going to have a communist revolution, much like the revolution of 1917 on Russia, where they would have seized the government of the United States of America and enacted their socialist policies, and they would have enacted their socialist utopia that they always want. And don't kid yourself, the leftists, that's all they want in the end. They want their revolution. They want to have their way. They want to take away your house. They want to take away all your property and give it to everybody else. This is what they want. And they're not coming in a nice, polite way because they know what they want. Most people who are reasonable don't want it. So to enact this, they have to do this much like the Russian Revolution in 1917. And Russia was brought to war along with World War I. And then obviously the Communist Revolution in 1917 was allowed to succeed after it failed before in 1905. When they enacted their policies, obviously communism failed because they were forced to kill off half the population of Russia. Well, maybe not half the population, but millions and millions of people. And this was just catastrophic. So to enable this, they have to enact the same revolution on America. Bring America to war. What's happening already? You have a war on 3 fronts: Taiwan, Israel, and Ukraine in Europe. Okay? And then at the moment of empire collapse, they would seize control through an internal revolution on the White House. This was all being planned out in advance. So remember how Rome collapsed way back in the day, thousands of years ago? So when Rome collapsed, all of Rome's enemies prepared for battle against her at the moment of empire collapse. Obviously, America's enemies are preparing for battle at the moment of empire collapse. And this was all enabled by a plant in the White House. Barack Obama was this plant orchestrated to the White House by the globalists who are working in unison with the communists to game and war game the U.S. industrial complex to bring us to its defeat. Now, this plant in the White House set up a bunch of stuff for the enemy to have before this war broke out so they could succeed. And then obviously in comes Donald Trump. Now, as much as I love Donald Trump, I think he's wonderful for this country. If you kind of have your little spidery senses happening right now, Donald Trump is turning everything around. So the U.S. is going back to what I would call its Cold War might, which means it has more kind of historical values from the 1960s. They want to have a bigger military. They want to have more nuclear weapons. This is a war you're in. It's that simple, ladies and gentlemen. And you are just going to see the result of this very shortly. And it's going to be an interesting time. So, Insider, we want to talk about the U.S. election. What's your latest thoughts regarding the U.S. election?
So I'm still sticking with my prediction that Trump is going to win 70-30.
So you feel that in your gut, or is that something you're seeing in the polls?
Well, the polls keep shifting back and forth, and you're seeing multiple different polls. You see Trump sweeping in one poll. Trump is sweeping all the bellwether states, all the battlefields, and in others, it's a mixed bag. It's in my gut. I feel it from the American public. I think it's going to be a big Trump victory.
Now, the polls are completely useless. Obviously, if you read the New York Times, you watch their polls or look at them, what they're telling you is not necessarily the case. If you look at, obviously, Republican polls, sometimes they're kind of skewed too. My internal gut is Trump is far ahead, okay? So I would predict, if you actually looked at the actual numbers and not what the polls are, I would think Trump is miles ahead in this election. So Trump is due, I would say, for a return to the White House. The only way they're going to stop this is if there's vast cheating on such a scale that it's completely out in the open and everyone's going to see it. Even the leftists know they're cheated. And this is something, listen, everyone looks at me and, I get emails and stuff like that, and people say, hey, what are your thoughts? What do you think is going to happen? Listen, I'm not a predictor of things. I can't predict the future. It's just that simple. I'm a human. But if you understand kind of the gamesmanship in the war and what they're actually attempting to do, you can understand the gamesmanship. So I'll explain it to you one more time, okay? So Trump gets in. He wins an election. They were expecting Hillary to win. Oh my goodness. What were they going to do at Hillary's presidency? Well, on the last 8 years, they were going to do this revolution or this war. This is where Biden is right now, okay? So they would have EMP'd the states, put the electrical grid down, much like Barack Obama's movie. When the electrical grid went down, they were going to seize control and then enact their socialist policies. When the U.S. complex was under war with itself, and returning to home base, all the aircraft carriers returning to kind of save America, all of America's, I guess, allies would be completely invaded and wiped off the map. Taiwan, South Korea, what else? Israel. Israel's a big one, right? Now, and people talk about Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia is obviously aligned with the U.S. They would have been gone too. So this would have been a completely world transformation process that happened in a very short period of time. So remember, Yuri Bezmenov, he talks about it only takes 6 weeks to bring the U.S. to crisis. And the crisis moment brings out the revolution. And then they have what it's called normalization. Everything is normalized. Normalization happens after the revolution where they seize control, they put their policies in place, their socialist policies, and they blackmail people. So in regards to this election, if you look at where we are right now, we are at a point where Hillary would be at the very end of her presidency and they would have been gaming this war. Right? These EMPs are happening imminently. That's what they've talked about. Klaus Schwab, when he talks about all these massive cyber attacks and everything, all these cyber attacks, they're already preparing you for this giant EMP attack. Now, this EMP attack was going to come from North Korea, as is detailed in that movie, Leave the World Behind. And obviously, North Korea being the instigator of this war is going to be huge in regards to this election, which you've detailed out. So really, the communists are either going to cheat Kamala in, and it's going to cheat so openly, they're going to go for it. If they cheat Kamala in, okay, it's not a good thing. It's a bad thing, okay? Because if they're going to fully expose themselves that they have control over the U.S. elections, they're going down because everyone's going to see them. When they're going down, the agenda is going to be full totalitarian. We're going to take your guns right away by force. And if they cheat, they're going to cheat the House and Senate and everything in the biggest smash and grab job you've ever seen. Everyone's going to know. Now, if Trump wins, Joe Biden is basically leaving office. So now instead of having this EMP attack that happens in Hillary's presidency, we have also all of a sudden this unknown. And Trump is going to take the White House, and what does he get? He gets the Armageddon Joker cards, the Ohio-class submarines given to him. Do you think they're going to have Taiwan, Israel, and Europe when he sits on that weapon? Absolutely not. Insider shaking his head. Absolutely not. So this is the amazing game of cat and mouse that you're witnessing. And if you really want to understand what is truly happening, go to theawakener.ca. Now, Insider, I think you had some other stuff you wanted to talk about in regards to, I think we want to talk more about Hunter Biden's case, which I don't think is over. We want to talk about Israel and obviously the three frontal wars. Where do you want to go to next?
Well, let's also talk about Trump. Do you think that if Trump wins the election, that the Democrats in the House are going to certify his election victory, or do you think that people like Soros are going to pull the Antifa card and start burning down cities?
No, I don't think. I think the Antifa card could have already been played long ago, and it's not happening because everything's being defunded and stopped. So ask yourself the question: why have there not been major rallies like we were expected to see? Well, because they've all been defunded and stopped. It's just that simple. So I want people to understand something, okay? So everything that's happening has already been chosen to happen and is detailed to happen. The events that are unfolding or will unfold are already planned to have unfolded at certain times. We're watching like kind of a military war game where strategic things have to happen. Do I think the Democrats will stop this? No, because I think that everything that has to happen has already happened. That means people in DC are already doing things to save themselves. We talked about January 6th being faked. We talked about all this stuff that's planned faked. Go to awakener.ca, you'll find out more. What was the next thing you wanted to get to?
So do you want to talk about Hunter Biden?
Sure, let's talk about Hunter Biden. My gut, and I know this is your gut too, Insider, this is not over, right?
No, it's not over by a stretch, because there's still sentencing, and there's a question if Joe Biden is going to commute his sentence or pardon him.
Well, and Trump was talking about communicating sentence.
Yeah, Trump could too.
Even J.D. Vance was talking about, we were a little bit hard on Hunter Biden, and we're like, okay, come on. They're all just keeping out of it. Don't you see this play by now? Insider, you see this play. You have to admit you see this play by now.
I see something.
Okay, well, Trump is saying, hey, we're going to pardon Hunter Biden. J.D. Vance is saying, hey, we're a little bit hard on Hunter Biden. What are they all setting up? They're all setting up to be like, oh my goodness, we had no idea how bad it was. What is going to happen is optically Trump and whoever's in president, vice president is going to have to stay out of it, because it's just what's going to come to light is going to be so catastrophic, and it's just be the giant red pill, and they have to optically stay out of it when the events unfold.
So that's why you think Trump is saying it, is so that he can extricate himself out of it.
Yeah, like, okay, when the events unfold, you said that you would pardon Hunter Biden. Well, this is so astronomical what is happening, all the money laundering, all the treason. Are you really going to pardon him? No, well, you know what? I should stay out of this, That's the next play. And this is why I think something is almost imminent, because he is actively showing that he is interested in pardoning Hunter Biden. Hunter Biden was not some big, we had no idea how grand this case was. Well, come on. Everybody knew. It's all a game.
So we have actually a question from the audience, and they want to know, how are they going to cover up a Kamala loss?
How are they going to cover up? Well, what do you mean by that?
I think what the questioner means is, if she loses,
right,
and how are they going to explain it away?
Oh, explain it? There's no explaining it. Like, she's just not popular. Anybody in their gut knows this. Even the leftists know that she's not popular right now. I don't think there's anything to really explain. So if Kamala wins, she's going to be cheated in epic proportion. So whatever the agenda is that they're going to pass on the American people is just going to be, the illusion is just going to get darker and darker and darker and more secretive. Okay. I don't think that's happened. My gut telling me is Trump is going to come back. I think too many things have happened legislation-wise. They've gotten some kind of fake voters here and there in different places. Some people have been removed off ballots that are fake or dead. And I think that this is going to be enough. Plus, Trump is just more popular now than he was back in 2020. And the Democrats are more hated. So this just becomes a bigger tidal wave that they have to get over. They really had to work hard to do the fix back in 2020. This was not an easy thing to pull off. For them to pull off this is a giant hurdle. Eventually, the hurdles become too big. Don't you think? You're running down the track. I mean, I'm not a sprinter. I go to the first hurdle. Maybe I can clear that. The second hurdle. Okay, we're not going to be able to do this anymore. So it's going to be an interesting time. What was the next thing you wanted to talk about?
Do you want to talk about anything about Canada?
Okay, let's talk about Canada, because I know how much we love Canada here, this horrible communist country that we live in, that is working to take down the U.S. complex, working with our enemies.
Yes.
So what would you like to talk about? Obviously, the spy.
Well, yeah. So now it's been disclosed that we have a number of spies. One is a very closely connected minister, Mary Ng, with Trudeau, and one is a conservative senator, a conservative appointed senator. That it's really strange because, as much as he's a conservative appointed senator, anything that has to do with China, he is really he always backs China. So it's very obvious that he seems to be in the pocket of China.
Dude, we predicted this like years and years and years ago. Now, we didn't name any names, but we did speculate that MPs were surrounding Trudeau, that Trudeau was being watched. He was being controlled by members of the parliament, various informants and people like that. So this is very, very deep. And also, like Trudeau, people are being blackmailed all across the Western world, okay? So politicians in Canada and America are being blackmailed and extorted, and this is why the enemy is able to do what they want to do. My bet is that Trudeau is being watched, he's being surveilled, and Trudeau himself has very much blackmailed a bunch of different people and is using that to kind of get his agenda. Now, his time in office is running out. What's the latest? I heard a rumor the Bloc are going to actually do something. Do you believe that?
So I don't believe the Bloc is going to do anything, but the Bloc is threatening that they are going to do something possibly before Christmas, meaning bringing down the government and having an early election.
Right.
The NDP and the Greens have said, so our Socialist Party and our...
Everyone's a Socialist Party here in Canada. Even kind of some of the Conservatives are still communists, and they don't know the crap that's coming out of their mouth is communist. So just letting you know that.
Fair enough. But our true communist, our true Socialist Party is the NDP, the unionized party. And they're saying that they're going to continue propping up the government.
Right.
The Greens are the same thing, but I think they only have 2 seats.
I think it's all nonsense. I think that there's no way that they're going to take out Trudeau. This is the thing, right? So Trudeau is acting very confident.
Yes.
He's acting like something is up, that he knows something. This doesn't make any sense. We think it makes sense on this podcast. Now, interestingly enough, I don't know if you saw this, but it was shown that China actually hacked a bunch of, was it the CRA they hacked this past week?
Correct.
So we had kind of talked about how China probably even hacked our election system.
Correct.
That was kind of something that we even talked about.
We've rumored that that's a potential that they could have hacked the electronic aspect of our election system. But CRA, for those who don't know, is the Canada Revenue Agency. It's Canada's IRS.
Yeah. And
here's another piece of news that just broke today. The potential successor to Trudeau, which you have always said is never going to happen, Mark Carney,
right.
His company, I think it's Brookfield Management, has now moved headquarters from Canada to New York, which shows that they are doubling down on doubting the Canadian economy.
Yeah, of course. And they're not, I don't believe for a second that Carney is going to come in. Now, you have to think about something. If you want to have a socialist revolution up here and you bring Trudeau in to start talking about mankind, what is people kind and all that stuff he talks about, do you want to downgrade to somebody who's a little bit more conservative than the original? No. They want to keep the agenda going full on steam ahead. So eventually, I mean, to be honest with you, they've lost the entire population of Canada. 50% of people in Canada are off this left-wing bandwagon right now, in my point of view.
Yeah.
And they're done with it. So any agenda that keeps going is just like, okay, you lost me at COVID is dangerous. You lost me at climate change is real.
Or transgender agenda.
Or transgenderism and all this nonsense.
Yeah. Gender-neutral washrooms.
Exactly. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see. I think that they're going to have no choice. Like we told you before on this podcast, the whole trio of everything that is happening is in regards to Barack Obama and his influence. Now, Barack Obama's influence, his purpose of being in office was because the enemy cannot beat the U.S. in a full-on thermonuclear war. It's that simple. Why is that? Because the U.S. possesses Ohio-class submarines. For Barack Obama to be in the White House shows you that they cannot deal with consequence of action. Now, if the Soviets, if Russia and China combined together, had 15,000 aircraft carriers, whatever it took to beat the U.S. and invade the U.S. homeland and take it out, they would have done it already. If they could enact this socialist revolution by force, they would have done so already. But they had to put Barack Obama there because they're scared. They cannot beat the Ohio-class submarines. That's the whole purpose of him being there. So the whole pillar of Barack Obama's identity is Trudeau being in office because they had to put him there to transport the U.S. fissile material. Second of all is Biden, because Biden was involved in the corruption. And as soon as he leaves office, can of worms is opening. And obviously Zelensky, because all his, ex-Soviet buddies in Ukraine are still working for the friggin' Soviets. And this is the whole illusion of what is happening. The House of Cards cannot break on those three. We're going to have one that breaks in the U.S. very soon, which is why this is such a critical moment. And I don't think Kamala's not their answer. But anyways, anything else you wanted to hit on?
Well, we can just give one piece of interesting news to the American audience and the Canadian audience who probably doesn't know this. So to give a background, Canada, in Parliament Hill in Ottawa, we have the Centre Bloc, which
We're
is
still talking about the communist country up to the north?
The communist country. Well, this is how communist it is. This is what I'm trying to express.
Right.
It's so communist that the Centre Bloc in Parliament Hill, which is the main building in Parliament, it's under a decade-long renovation project. So everything's been moved to West Block a number of years ago.
Dude, I could have renovated that whole thing myself.
Hold on a second. Hold on. Everything's moved on to West Block. Well, you couldn't have done this. So everything's moved on to West Block. So Centre Block is going to have 200 new washrooms.
Okay.
And all of them are going to be gender neutral.
Oh, great. Well,
So
Trudeau, we don't know if he
Canada.
has a vagina or a penis some days, so I don't know. Anyways, the last thing we should probably talk about before we go on to things is obviously talk about the three fronts with the three frontal wars. So the first one I want to talk about, Insider, is Israel. Obviously, I've kind of explained that Israel wants to go for Iran's nuclear sites. Their main nuclear site, I can't even pronounce the Iranian city. It starts with an N. It's buried under a mountain, and the only way I think they can actually penetrate that is actually to have a plant from the inside go in and blow it up, or use a nuclear bomb, because the bunker busters are not big enough. Now, I think that what is happening now, based on what I'm seeing, is that Israel is countering Iran by taking out their other smaller nuclear sites that are around the country, okay? And they're taking down their SAM sites to allow this big invasion or this big bombing. I think Israel is trying to set this plan up that they're planning to do this or take out the final, nuclear facility during Trump's presidency. Interestingly enough, because Trump is coming back. Everybody knows, Iran knows what's coming to it. Let's not kid ourselves. And it's going to be really cool to watch them, what they do after Trump wins the election. So the next thing we want to talk about is Taiwan. Taiwan is the same status quo. I guess about 3 or 4 years ago, they started to have more and more invasions into the territory, and now it's becoming a regular occurrence. Taiwan, every single day, wakes up and there's always planes and boats in their territory. And so this war could break out the next day, and everyone's not going to expect it. In the case of Ukraine, this is just going to drag out for all eternity. We have North Korean soldiers. North Korean soldiers are coming into this battle because it's Operation Human Shield, and Putin is out of his worst kind of soldiers, and they're just sending everybody right now. I mean, maybe a year from now, Zelensky will be fighting on Russian side too. So you never know what's going to come when the truth comes out. It's going to be an interesting time. Anyways, thank you for tuning in. The Insider and me appreciate it. We're going to do the Patreon show. Check out theawakener.ca. It's the best thing that ever happened to you.